Hey, what is up guys, I'm KBHD here, and it's the end of 2013, and now smartwatches are becoming a thing. So this one here is the Samsung Galaxy Gear. It's the first smartwatch from Samsung, and it's probably that smartwatch you saw in some commercial somewhere. But it was a pretty good commercial, but the first generation of a product you see out of a company is usually the one you want to pay the most attention to, especially the first product in a new product category like smartwatches. So this is the one we're going to put under the microscope first. Let's take a full, detailed look at the Samsung Galaxy Gear. At first glance, the Galaxy Gear appears to be just slightly different from your normal watch, but Samsung is calling it the next big thing. So this is their first in wearable tech, and they've decided to put it on your wrist as an accessory to your phone, and it'll connect via Bluetooth. So as a watch, this is actually quite well built. It's a solid, rigid plastic band all the way around, and a pretty nice clasp design that's adjustable to fit even the most extreme wrist sizes like mine. And the watch part itself is actually pretty compact. It doesn't stand out or look as ridiculous as you might think. The only button on the entire device is the power button on the right-hand side, which can be programmed to do certain things when you double tap it, but a single tap will turn the display on or off. And surrounding the whole face of the watch is, surprise, metal. Real metal from Samsung, so that's good news. And of course, on the actual face of the watch, instead of the regular analog mechanics, it is a 1.6-inch 320 by 320 OLED display, and it's actually objectively very nice. It has a 275 ppi pixel density and great, bright, vivid colors. It has an outdoor mode for enhanced brightness so you can see it everywhere, and excellent viewing angles, so you can see it indoors, outdoors, pretty much whenever you want. It's really nice display. On the back, you have these pins, which you'll need to connect to the dock for the Galaxy Gear, which is actually necessary. It comes in the box, and you need it for the NFC pairing setup for the first time, and for every time you charge it. So every time you want to charge your Galaxy Gear, you have to hook it up to this clasp dock, which has that lovely faux leather stitching that we love so much, and then you'll plug it in. Now, around the bottom of the watch, there's another metal piece that sits below your wrist, and unfortunately, this is the only part of the watch that feels a bit bulky and actually sometimes gets in the way. So when I'm resting my wrist on something or trying to type, it kind of gets annoying, but there's a reason for this metal piece here. There are actually more electronics in there. If you hold it up to the light, you can actually see the electronics wiring going down into the metal clasp. Turns out this metal clasp contains the speakerphone. Yes, that's a speakerphone in the bottom. So you don't actually have to hold the watch up to your face like a weirdo to talk on the phone. You can just talk and it'll hear you. But you do have to hold it like a total weirdo, however, if you want to take pictures with it, like this. Because that's a camera. Yeah, the bulge on the Galaxy Gear is a camera. Questionable choice of a feature to add on a watch, but hey, it's there. It's a 2-megapixel sensor, and it can take square photos that actually, they look half decent for a watch. And the Gear can also record up to 15 seconds of 720p video, and I've noticed that the microphone quality, since it's meant for phone calls and a speakerphone, it's pretty good. You can get an idea of the video quality here. It's definitely not bad. But at its heart, this is an Android device, Android 4.2 to be specific, and sometimes it's really obvious, but other times not so much, thanks of course to Samsung's skin that they've overlaid on here that shows one app per page, but it's powered by a single-core 800 MHz processor, half a gig of RAM, and it even has 4 gigs of internal storage, and it's packing a 315 mAh battery. To put that into perspective, this watch actually has very similar computing power to the original Motorola Droid back in the day, which was a very sizable device, but it has a battery way less than a quarter of the size. And because of that, it can only really promise you 1 full day of actual use. And you might be able to eke 2 days out of it if you really don't use it all that much. Standby time is great, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to charge it every single night. And as a watch person, that's usually something people don't have to do with a watch. So it's a really big annoyance if you're used to, only charging 1 device every night instead of 2. But really though, what can the Galaxy Gear do? That's the number one question people have about it when they see it. Well, okay, number one, it can give you notifications from your phone. They're pretty useless though because they don't actually tell you anything. They just tell you that you have a notification on your phone, which means you have to go check your phone anyway. I mean, it's kind of pointless. It's better with some built-in Samsung apps like the Samsung Mail app and Samsung Stock Messenger, but not everyone really uses those. Next up, there's S-Voice to give you commands to your phone, which should in theory let you call people and text people from your wrist, but S-Voice is still S-Voice, and the speech recognition is a bit shoddy and it doesn't always work all the time. You can take voice memos and save them to your phone, which is nice. And you also have the gallery, which lets you take pictures and transfer them to your Samsung phone or even share them directly from supported apps in the Samsung store, which we'll get to in a second. There's a media controller, which is actually very useful. It allows you to control the volume and media playback in like any media app, like YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, whatever. So you can control your music while keeping your phone in your pocket. And then there's a pedometer to keep track of your fitness and distance traveled and calories burned. And it can also talk to the S Health app on your Samsung phone. So wearable tech right now really seems to be specializing in fitness, which can be really cool. Also, side note, the pedometer isn't very accurate. I mean, it's on your wrist, so you can walk with your hands in your pockets and they'll somewhat sync up. But if you don't, then this is a step, and this is a step, and this is a step, and I'm walking? What? And then there's the contacts, the call log, and the dialer, so you can place and receive calls on the speakerphone on your watch, on your wrist, which is what Samsung has really been harping up in their commercials. And I gotta say, this feature works perfectly. It basically turns your phone into a Bluetooth speaker. Might not be the coolest thing in public when everyone can hear your phone call, but when the phone is in another room and maybe Bluetooth is still connected, you can pick up an incoming call without running to go find your phone. And lastly, there is a mini app store that Samsung has kickstarted for their Galaxy Gear. And the list of apps in that app store is definitely not very large, and there aren't even that many categories, but then again, it's a watch. And hey, there are some nice apps in there. There are some interesting, somewhat usefully functional apps. Like the watch face applications, I really like them because they let me actually mess around with the Galaxy Gear's watch face in real time, so that's nice. But the rest of them are basically miniaturized versions of bigger titles like Evernote or Snapchat, and there are some pretty big gaps that should obviously be filled later. This is literally a brand new app store, so it doesn't take any sort of cues from Google Play at all, but that's something developers are going to have to fill in. The apps I'm finding and liking for the Galaxy Gear are mostly, oh, why didn't I think of that ideas? Like stuff like that could really seem like a smartwatch is worth getting. But just because you can't do it on any other form factor doesn't mean you actually need to. Right now it seems like a case of Google Glass where the App Store doesn't immediately matter. It's more just about warming people up to the core functionality of a device with this new form factor and then letting the App Store grow and seeing what developers can do with it. Now up to this point you may have realized, hey, this is all being done through a Samsung app on a Samsung device. And you'd be totally right. This is actually only compatible with a Samsung Android device running Android 4.3 or later. And there are only two of those right now, the Galaxy Note 3 and the Galaxy Note 10.1 tablet, and soon the Galaxy S4 and the Galaxy Note 2, but it's a very small portion of all the devices out there, and that is easily the Galaxy Gear's biggest limitation and biggest fault or problem at this point. And it even looks worse when you compare it to its natural competitor, which would be the Pebble smartwatch right now, which is compatible with just about any smartwatch that has Bluetooth. So the biggest limitation to the Galaxy Gear right now, physically, is the compatibility. So at the end of the day, the Galaxy Gear is definitely a very polarizing and somewhat confusing device just because it's unclear who exactly is going to buy something like this, because when you consider the watch enthusiasts already, who already all have watches, they're not going to spend $300 on something that's like this. But if you consider the tech enthusiasts who always use their phones, why would they put something on their wrist? So if you're on the fence about buying something like this, I would say at least wait for the price to drop, because it will, mark my words. But if you want to keep waiting, the Galaxy Gear 2 is probably going to be a better option. Or you could wait from the other smartwatch manufacturers, because Google's probably going to come out with one, Apple's probably going to come out with one, Sony's probably going to come out with one, and many, many more. So there's definitely some future things to look forward to. But since Samsung did it first, this is what they can call their pioneer, and they can take all the credit for being the first one in the market with it. But I can't really recommend it for everyone. I can only really recommend it for someone who just has to have it as a sort of a companion or accessory to your Galaxy phone. So this is a good entry, it's a good beginning, and it's a good start, and a good sign for the future of smartwatches, and it's definitely got me excited for what we're going to see when Google takes a stab at it and many more companies get their game on with the smartwatch and other wearable tech. Either way, that's